Greetings from Whiteman Motors. Just going to hear today to talk about this bug. This is a 62. I haven't talked about this one before. I've had this one about a month and a half or so, and bought it in Montana. And it's pretty much all original, 1962, a 40-horse bug. These are the kind of bugs that everybody used to pass up from purchasing many years ago, because everybody wanted to convert them to 1600 engines, and it got to the point where it was more and more difficult to find a 40-horse engine that was still in one of these cars. Well, this one has it. That's why I bought it. The 62 has a lot of features that are different from many of the other ones, but anyway, the 62 has some things that I really like. Because it's a 40-horse engine, it has just that much more power that makes it usable for everyday driving. And it still gets outstanding fuel economy, at least it did back then, back in the 60s. Once you get one of these things tuned in right, the engine, they'll just run and run and run and run and run. But they don't have quite the power that a 50-horse engine does, or a 53-horse 1600 has. So it can definitely, you need to shift down oftentimes on major hills or long grades. But this one definitely can hold its own much better than a 36-horse engine. One of the hallmarks that I've gone by forever is I've always told my son when he was growing up, if a car's got a hubcap missing or more hubcaps missing, avoid them. But if they're all there, then it's worth going for. And this one had all its hubcaps, and so to me that's a significant feature. So as you walk around the car, you can see the bumpers are all original. Everything's pretty much original. Hubcaps are original. The running boards are original. The rear bumper is the original one, but it's got a little tweak in it right here. But that's okay. I'm okay with tweaks anymore. I'm okay with little issues because, again, if I go to all the work to restore this, which can be easily done, then you just don't drive them. But original running boards, they don't have buckling in them. Even the original rubber on the floor on the running board is still there. Somebody bought this years ago, and they maintained it religiously. You can tell. But then I think the old person that owned it, I think he passed away, and it was passed down through a family, which is pretty typical. And most of the kids don't like these cars because most VWs require a lot of tinkering. That's the way VWs are. For most kids who appreciate, Toyotas and Nissans and whatnot, there's nothing wrong with those cars at all. For today's age, they're really very great and practical. But this car in its day and age was the only car you could get that had the features that I liked, and that was the approachability, the workability. You could work on them, and great fuel economy. The interior is pretty much all original. Even has the original floor mats. The carpet, I think, has been replaced many years ago, but it's decent shape. This car is still all 6-volt, and everything works on it. Even the little courtesy light. I got the courtesy light working, and which is really unusual too. The cloth headliner is really unique, but most of the time they're pretty shredded by this time. They don't last very long. The later ones that are perforated, they are much longer lasting. And then back here, this is an original 40-horse engine. It's an early 40-horse engine with the 36-horse the shroud in the back. It's not the squared-off shroud like they had in 63 and later. This is a stale air heater system, and this is the last year of the stale air system that's in here, and it's working fine. When I got it, it didn't run very well at all, very low on power. It barely ran, and it had issues with the intake manifold, had a hole in it. The carburetor has been rebuilt. It has no choke, because a 6-volt choke are not real responsive, but it starts right up without a choke. This is not the original distributor. This is about a 65 distributor. It's the later style with the newer vacuum can. The ones that came stock on this one were the large diameter distributors. And this one has been changed out, and as long as it's dialed in right, it works great. and it's got the fuel pump was bad in this one, and so I replaced it. And you can't find the original fuel pumps anymore. I tried to rebuild it, but I wasn't satisfied with it, with the original one. And so I replaced it with an aftermarket, has the screw-in fuel line, comes from the gas tank right there. And I know I've had a lot of comments on this, and you know, I may change it, I may not, and that's the location of the fuel filter. A lot of people they tell you to put the fuel filter down inside underneath behind the firewall, so it's out of the engine compartment. And I've done it both ways. I've had it both ways, and my premise is, as long as you maintain it, as long as you watch it, as long as you make sure that everything is all nice and tight fitting, it's going to be fine. I had to replace the 6-volt coil, and it's got everything is all, you know, all new points and whatnot. I had to readjust the valves. My experience with the 40 horse is, once you get these things running well, they really run well for a long time. In the front, it's still, you know, it has even the spare wheel and the spare tire has the two-tone color combination, which is another thing that turned me on about this car. That's the trunk. Last year of the VW Insignia on the front, the Wolfsburg crest. This has been loved and well repaired, because somebody went through all the effort to save this thing many, many years ago. And it handles really well, and it's fun to drive. One of the features that I like about this car is that it starts right up and it runs really well without having the electric choke. Gas gauge works, everything works in this thing, even the horn. But the trouble with the horn is that it won't work this way because I disconnected it right at the horn itself. Because once it's hooked up, the horn will take off and work on its own, depending on which way you turn, which is really common with these on the ground system, because the ground system for these is through the steering column, and the steering column itself is actually the route for your current on the steering column housing, I should say. This has a full synchromesh transmission. That's also a feature of the 40 horse bugs, so it's got a good transmission. I mean, it's easier to use for just stop and go traffic. The old 36 horse had the crash box, which you had to come to a full stop to shift it into first gear. So it's got the sun visors are in amazing condition for their age. It handles really well, except for the fact that this is still, the front end is a kingpin front end, which gives it a tendency to want to wander. Sometimes it'll just be going straight down the road, and all of a sudden it'll just take off or veer off to the right or to the left, and you have to be aware of it all the time. As a matter of fact, you got to really kind of drive this. This is a driver's car, really. You got to pay attention all the time. You can't be, you know, loose and easy driving this thing. You just have to be cognizant of the fact that it can be touchy. Which is, to me, very rewarding. You know, and even without a radio, whether you have a radio or not, it's significant. Because I'll see it starting to, you can see it kind of, when I pick up the speed, it kind of shoots off one direction,